The pregnancy test shook in my hands as I stared at the 3 pink lines. 3. After 5 years of marriage, 5 years of Dr. Harrison telling us conception was unlikely, 5 years of my husband Marcus growing more distant with each negative test, 3 perfect pink lines. I set the test down on our marble bathroom counter, my reflection staring back from the mirror Marcus had insisted on installing. Everything in our penthouse apartment screamed success: imported Italian fixtures, designer everything, and a price tag that reflected Marcus's status as one of the city's most prominent cardiac surgeons. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. But those 3 lines represented something money couldn't buy. My phone buzzed against the counter. Marcus, texting from the hospital, working late again. Don't wait up. Another surgery scheduled. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, okay. Love you. He didn't respond. I picked up the test again, studying it in the afternoon light streaming through our floor-to-ceiling windows. Dr. Harrison had been wrong about many things, but he'd been right about one: if I ever did conceive, it would be considered high risk. Triplets at 34, after years of fertility struggles, would require careful monitoring. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus, the brilliant surgeon who saved lives daily, had given up on creating one with me. I called Dr. Martinez, the fertility specialist I'd been seeing secretly for the past 6 months. The one Marcus didn't know about because he'd declared our attempts medically pointless after Dr. Harrison's diagnosis. Elena? Dr. Martinez's voice was warm over the phone. I wasn't expecting to hear from you until next week's appointment. I need to move it up, I said, still staring at the test. I think it worked. Silence. Then, the IVF? Elena, are you saying you're pregnant? 3 lines, I whispered. On 3 different tests. Come in immediately. I'll see you within the hour. I hung up and walked to our bedroom, looking at the photos on Marcus's nightstand. Our wedding day. 5 years ago, both of us laughing. The picture from our honeymoon in Tuscany where he'd promised me a house full of children. The more recent ones where his smile never quite reached his eyes. The last photo was from our anniversary dinner 2 months ago. I remembered that night clearly because it was when Marcus first mentioned Dr. Harrison's suggestion that we accept reality and move on. Maybe we should consider other options, he'd said over his perfectly cooked salmon. Adoption, or, maybe, it's time to focus on our careers instead. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'd known then that he was pulling away, but I'd refused to give up. The secret IVF treatments, paid for with money from my trust fund that Marcus didn't know about, had been my last hope. Now, holding the positive test, I realized this wasn't just about having a baby anymore. This was about proving that our marriage was worth fighting for. Dr. Martinez's office was across town, in a building Marcus would never visit. I'd been careful about that, scheduling appointments when he was in surgery, paying in cash, keeping all documentation in a safety deposit box he didn't know existed. Triplets, Dr. Martinez said, her face glowing as she studied the ultrasound screen. Elena, you're carrying triplets. I started crying then, overwhelmed by relief and terror in equal measure. Are they okay? Perfect, she assured me, pointing to 3 tiny flickering heartbeats on the screen. Though we'll need to monitor you closely. Triplets are always high risk, especially given your age and history. I nodded, wiping my eyes. When do I tell my husband? Dr. Martinez paused, her expression shifting. Elena, I have to ask. Does Marcus know about the IVF treatments? No. The word came out smaller than I intended. He'd given up. He said we needed to face reality. This conversation needs to happen soon, she said gently. You're about 8 weeks along. You'll start showing within the next month, and the morning sickness, as if on cue, a wave of nausea hit me. I'd attributed the recent queasiness to stress about our marriage, but now it made perfect sense. I'll tell him tonight, I promised, though my stomach churned at the thought. The drive home was surreal. I kept glancing at the ultrasound photos on my passenger seat, 3 tiny beings who would change everything. Marcus had always said he wanted Children, but that was before years of disappointment had worn down his hope. Our apartment felt different when I walked in. The space we designed together now seemed like a stage set, beautiful but empty. I could hear Marcus in his study, probably reviewing surgical notes or research papers. He'd been spending more time there lately, claiming he needed to prepare for a promotion to department head. I knocked softly on his door. Marcus? Can we talk? Kind of busy, Elena, his voice came through the heavy oak door. Can it wait until tomorrow? Tomorrow. Always tomorrow with Marcus lately. It's important, I said, my hand instinctively moving to my still flat stomach. The door opened, and Marcus appeared, still in his scrubs from surgery. He looked tired, stressed, and when he saw my face, slightly annoyed. What's wrong now? He asked, and I flinched at the impatience in his voice. I went to see a doctor today, I began, but he was already shaking his head. Elena, we've been through this. Dr. Harrison was clear about our options, and I'm not putting us through more false hope and expensive treatments. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between us. Marcus stared at me, his expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and something I couldn't quite identify. That's impossible, he said finally. Dr. Harrison said your chances were essentially zero. I got a second opinion, and third opinion, and fourth. I pulled out the ultrasound photos with trembling hands. Marcus, we're having triplets. He took the photos, studying them with the clinical eye of a surgeon. I watched his face, looking for joy, excitement, anything that resembled the man who'd once dreamed of coaching Little League and teaching our children to ride bikes. Instead, I saw suspicion. When? He asked, his voice cold. When did this happen? About 8 weeks ago. I said. Remember that weekend when you were on call but got pulled into emergency surgery? You came home exhausted and 8 weeks. He was calculating, and I could see the moment realization hit him. You've been seeing another fertility specialist. It wasn't a question. Yes, I admitted. Dr. Martinez. She specializes in cases like mine, cases like yours? Marcus's voice was rising. Elena, do you understand what you've done? Behind my back, against medical advice, you've put yourself at serious risk. Triplets at your age, with your history. Our children, I corrected. Are triplets. Are they even mine? The question hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward, clutching the ultrasound photos to my chest. How can you ask me that? You've been sneaking around for months, lying to me about where you've been going, hiding medical treatments. Marcus's surgical training was taking over, his voice becoming detached and analytical. From a medical standpoint, spontaneous conception of triplets in a woman with your fertility history is highly unusual. They're yours, I whispered, tears starting to fall. They're ours. I need to think, he said, turning back toward his study. This changes everything. Marcus, wait, I said I need to think, Elena. The door closed between us with a soft click that sounded like finality. I stood in the hallway for a long time, holding the pictures of our babies, listening to him make phone calls behind the closed door. I caught fragments, legal implications, high-risk pregnancy, medical malpractice if something goes wrong. He was already thinking like a lawyer instead of a father. That night, I lay alone in our king-size bed, my hand resting on my stomach where 3 tiny lives were growing. Marcus never came to bed. When I woke up at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom, a symptom I now understood, I could see light under his study door. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen, already dressed in a fresh suit, drinking coffee and reading medical journals on his tablet. We need to talk about termination options, he said without looking up. Termination? The word came out as a gasp. Elena, be realistic. Triplets are high risk under the best circumstances. Given your age and fertility history, the chances of complications are significant. And if something happens to you, if something happens to me, what? You'll be free to marry someone younger? Someone more fertile? Marcus finally looked at me, his expression cold and clinical. I'm thinking about your health. You're thinking about your career, I shot back. About how a disabled wife or high risk pregnancy might affect your promotion to department head. That's not, isn't it? I sat down across from him, studying the man I'd thought I knew. When did you stop wanting children, Marcus? When did you stop wanting them with me? He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer but somehow more devastating. Maybe when I realized that you were willing to lie to me, sneak around behind my back, and make medical decisions that could endanger your life just to prove a point. To prove a point? I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. I did this because I love you. Because I believed in us. You did this because you couldn't accept reality, Marcus replied, his clinical tone returning. And now we're both paying the price. I wanted to argue, to fight, to make him understand. But looking at his face, I realized something that made my chest tight with panic. Marcus had already made his decision. The question wasn't whether he wanted these babies, the question was whether he still wanted me. I have surgery in an hour, he said, standing and straightening his tie. We'll discuss this tonight when I get home. But he didn't come home that night. Or the next stop. By the third day, I found the note on his pillow, staying at the hospital. Need space to think. We'll talk soon. No love. No, I'm sorry. Just his initial, like he was signing a prescription. I called Dr. Martinez. The stress isn't good for the babies, she warned after I explained Marcus's reaction. You need support during this time. Family? Friends? I almost laughed. Marcus had been my whole world for 5 years. My parents had died in a car accident 2 years into our marriage, and I'd let friendships fade as I became consumed with trying to conceive. The trust fund that had paid for the IVF was all I had left of my family's wealth. I'll be fine, I lied, but I wasn't fine. The morning sickness was getting worse, and the emotional stress was taking its toll. I started researching high-risk pregnancy support groups, reading everything I could about carrying triplets, making contingency plans. That didn't include Marcus. It was during one of these late-night research sessions that I found the article. Dr. Marcus Chen promoted to Chief of Cardiac Surgery at Metropolitan General Hospital. The article was dated 2 days ago. 2 days after he'd asked me about termination options. 2 days after he'd moved out of our bedroom, there was a photo of Marcus shaking hands with the hospital board chairman, his smile brilliant and confident. The smile I remembered from our wedding day. The article mentioned his dedication to his work and single-minded focus on patient care. It also mentioned the welcome reception being planned in his honor. At the bottom, in smaller print, was a detail that made my blood run cold. Dr. Chen will be relocating to the new physician housing complex adjacent to the hospital, allowing for greater availability to his patients. Physician housing. Single housing. I called the hospital. Dr. Chen's office. This is Jessica. Hi Jessica, this is Elena Chen, Dr. Chen's wife. I was wondering if you could help me with details about the welcome reception. Oh, Mrs. Chen. Jessica's voice brightened. I'm so sorry, but Dr. Chen specifically asked that his personal life be kept separate from hospital functions. He said he didn't want any family distractions during this transitional period. Family distractions. I see, I managed. Well, congratulations to him. He's been working so hard, Jessica continued, unaware that she was destroying my world with every word. Practically living at the hospital these past few weeks. He really deserves this promotion. After I hung up, I sat in our living room, my living room now, apparently, and felt something shift inside me. The devastation was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Something that reminded me of the woman I'd been before. I became consumed with saving my marriage. My trust fund wasn't just money. It was freedom. I called my lawyer. Elena? Richard Steinberg had handled my family's affairs for decades. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Richard, I need to ask you about something confidential. If I wanted to disappear for a while, what would that look like financially? There was a pause. Elena, is everything all right? Is this about Marcus? I can't discuss details right now, but I need to know my options. Complete financial independence. Different city, different life. Your trust fund is substantial, Richard said carefully. And it's entirely in your name. Marcus has no legal claim to it. If you wanted to relocate, you could live very comfortably wherever you chose. What about medical care? Ongoing, high-level medical care? Certainly manageable. Elena, are you in some kind of trouble? I looked down at my stomach, where 3 tiny heartbeats were growing stronger every day. No, I said finally. I'm figuring out how to get out of trouble. That night, Marcus came home for the first time in 3 days. He found me in the kitchen, eating crackers and ginger tea, the only things that stayed down lately. Elena, we need to talk. I looked up at him, this man I'd loved so completely, and felt oddly calm. Congratulations on your promotion, I said. He had the grace to look embarrassed. You heard about that? I called your office. Jessica was very helpful. She mentioned something about physician housing. Marcus sat down across from me, his expression serious. Elena, I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few days. About us, about what you've told me, about our future. And I think we both know this marriage hasn't been working for a while. The fertility issues, the stress, the lying. He trailed off, then took a deep breath. I think it would be best if we separated. Because I'm pregnant? Because we want different things, he said, his voice gentle but firm. You want a family at any cost, even if it means risking your health. I want a partner who trusts me enough to make medical decisions together. I see. I sipped my ginger tea, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. And the babies? If you choose to continue the pregnancy, I'll provide financial support. But, Elena. He paused, meeting my eyes. I can't be the father you want me to be. Not to children conceived through deception. Deception. That's what he called my desperate attempt to save our marriage. I understand, I said. Marcus looked surprised. You do? Yes. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. I understand that you've already moved on. The promotion, the new housing, the no family distractions policy at work. You've made your choice. Elena, it's fine, Marcus. Really. I walked toward the hallway, then paused. I'll be out of the apartment by the end of the week. You don't have to rush. Yes, I do, I said, finally understanding what I needed to do. Because you're right about one thing. We do want different things. What are you going to do? I turned back to look at him one last time, memorizing his face. In a few months, when my children asked about their father, I wanted to remember him. As he was now, brilliant, successful, and completely convinced he was making the right choice. I'm going to raise our children, I said simply. Somewhere far away from here. Elena, you can't just disappear, watch me. I left him sitting in our kitchen, probably already calculating how quickly he could file divorce papers and move into his new life. Upstairs, I started packing. As I folded clothes and gathered personal items, my phone rang. Dr. Martinez. Elena. I've been thinking about our conversation regarding stress management. I have a colleague in Portland, Dr. Rebecca Hartman. She specializes in high-risk multiple pregnancies, and she's agreed to take you on as a patient if you're interested in relocating. I stopped packing. Portland. It's far enough for a fresh start, close enough to excellent medical facilities. Dr. Hartman has delivered hundreds of healthy triplets. She comes highly recommended. How did you know I might need to relocate? Dr. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Because I've seen this before, Elena. The stress, the unsupportive partner, the difficult choices. Sometimes geography is the best medicine. I looked around our bedroom, at the photos of Marcus and me, at the life we'd built together. In a few hours, none of it would matter. Send me Dr. Hartman's information, I said. I think I'm ready for that fresh start. As I continued packing, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, hope. Not for reconciliation, not for fixing what was broken, but for something entirely new. By the time Marcus came upstairs, I had 3 suitcases packed and a plan forming. Elena, you're really leaving? We're really leaving, I corrected, my hand moving to my stomach. He followed my gesture, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Regret? Loss? But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Where will you go? Somewhere safe, I said. Somewhere our children will be wanted. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Finally, I never said they weren't wanted. You asked me to terminate the pregnancy, I reminded him. You called them a deception. You moved out rather than celebrate the miracle we've been hoping for 5 years. I zipped up my last suitcase. That's not the reaction of a man who wants children. Elena. He reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't, I said softly. You've made your choice. Let me make mine. I called a car service to take me to a hotel for the night. Tomorrow, I'd fly to Portland and start over. Tonight, I just needed To get away from the man who had broken my heart by giving me exactly what I'd always dreamed of, and then rejecting it completely. As the car pulled away from our building, I didn't look back. But in the side mirror, I could see Marcus standing at our window, watching me leave. By the time he realized what he'd lost, I'd be gone. And our children would be safe from the kind of rejection that had nearly destroyed me. The plane to Portland would take off in 14 hours. By then, Elena Chen would be just a memory. The woman who got on that plane would be someone entirely new. Portland's morning mist felt like a benediction as I stepped off the plane, 6 months pregnant and showing. The Pacific Northwest had embraced me from my first day here, offering the kind of fresh start I'd never imagined possible. Dr. Rebecca Hartman had been everything Dr. Martinez promised: brilliant, supportive, and completely unfazed by my story of starting over. 3 healthy heartbeats, she'd confirmed during my first appointment 3 months ago. And you're handling the pregnancy beautifully, Elena. Whatever stress you were under before, leaving it behind was the right choice. I'd chosen the name Elena Rodriguez for my new life, using my grandmother's maiden name and keeping enough of myself to feel authentic. The trust fund made everything possible: a beautiful craftsman house in the Pearl District, the best medical care, and most importantly, complete anonymity. Marcus had tried to contact me exactly twice in the 4 months since I'd left. Both times through Richard, my lawyer, demanding to know where I was and threatening legal action. Richard had been magnificently unhelpful, citing client confidentiality and suggesting Marcus focus on his divorce proceedings instead of harassing his soon-to-be ex-wife. The divorce papers had been served to Richard's office. I'd signed them from my new home, officially becoming Elena Rodriguez in every legal sense that mattered. Marcus had filed on grounds of abandonment and irreconcilable differences. He'd gotten his freedom, his promotion, and apparently, based on the social media posts I'd glimpsed through a friend's account, a new girlfriend. Dr. Jessica Morrison, according to the photos. A pediatric surgeon, blonde, petite, and everything I'd never been. The pictures showed them at medical conferences, charity galas, and romantic dinners. She was young enough that fertility wouldn't be an issue, successful enough to understand his career demands, and clearly smitten with the brilliant Dr. Chen. It should have hurt more than it did. Elena? Sarah, my new neighbor and unexpected best friend, knocked on my front door. Ready for today's adventure? I opened the door, laughing at her enthusiasm. Sarah was a single mother of 2, a successful graphic designer who worked from home, and the first real friend I'd made in years. She'd taken one look at my pregnant, displaced self and immediately adopted me into her chosen family. Nursery shopping, I confirmed, grabbing my purse. Though I still can't believe I need 3 of everything. Trust me, once they're here, you'll understand why people call triplets a full-contact sport. Sarah grinned, helping me into her SUV. But you're going to be amazing at this. The morning flew by in a blur of cribs, car seats, and tiny clothes in triplicate. Sarah had insisted on documenting everything, taking photos of me holding impossibly small onesies and laughing over the logistics of feeding 3 babies simultaneously. Have you thought about names? She asked as we loaded the car with our purchases. I have, I admitted. I've been waiting to see their faces, but I have some ideas. What I didn't tell her was that I'd chosen names that honored my new life while completely severing ties to my old one. No family names, no meaningful connections to Marcus or anyone from my previous existence. These children would be entirely mine, born into a world where they were wanted and celebrated from their first breath. My phone buzzed as we drove home. Dr. Hartman. Elena, I wanted to check in about your birth plan. At 34 weeks, we're approaching the range where we might need to consider early delivery if any complications arise. How are they looking? I asked, my hand instinctively moving to my belly. Perfect. All 3 are developing beautifully, though baby A is getting a bit cramped. I'd like to schedule weekly monitoring from now on, and I want you to have your hospital bag ready just in case. After hanging up, I realized this was really happening. In a matter of weeks, I'd be holding 3 babies who had no idea their father had wanted them terminated. The thought filled me with a fierce protectiveness I'd never experienced before. Everything okay? Sarah asked, glancing at me with concern. Perfect, I said, meaning it. Everything's perfect. That evening, I sat in the nursery Sarah had helped me set up, surrounded by 3 of everything. The room was painted in soft greens and yellows, with a mobile of woodland creatures slowly turning above the matching cribs. No pink or blue. I'd refused to learn the babies' genders, wanting to be surprised. My laptop was open to a video call with Richard, my lawyer back in New York. The divorce is final, he reported. Marcus didn't contest the settlement terms. Probably because he doesn't realize how much you're actually worth. He seemed primarily concerned with ensuring no financial obligations beyond what was explicitly stated. Which is nothing, I said. Since he has no idea where I am or that the babies were actually born. Elena, Richard's expression grew serious. You know he could try to find you. Hire investigators, file custody claims, let him try, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. He'd have to prove paternity first, and that would require knowing the children exist. As far as Marcus Chen is concerned, Elena Chen disappeared 6 months ago. And if he does find out? I looked around the nursery, thinking about the life I'd built here. Then Elena Rodriguez will be ready. After ending the call, I checked my secure email account, the one connected to my old life that I monitored for emergencies. There was a message from an address I didn't recognize, but the subject line made my breath catch. Congratulations on your pregnancy. My hand shook as I opened it. Elena, this is Jessica Morrison. I know this is unusual, but I felt you should know that Marcus and I are engaged. We're planning a summer wedding, and I wanted to reach out woman to woman. I know your marriage ended badly, and I hope you can find peace in moving forward. I also wanted you to know that Marcus has mentioned you might have been pregnant when you left. If that's true, I hope you're getting the support you need. Despite everything, Marcus speaks of you with respect, and I thought you deserved to know he's found happiness. I hope you have too. Jessica, I stared at the message for a long time, processing the information. Marcus was engaged. They were planning a summer wedding. And somehow, Jessica knew about the pregnancy. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on something simple. Thank you for reaching out. I wish you both well. But as I closed the laptop, something nagged at me. How had Jessica gotten my email address? And why did she really feel compelled to contact me? The next morning brought answers in the form of another email, this one. From Marcus himself. Elena, I know you told me to leave you alone, but I can't stop thinking about what you said before you left. About the babies. Jessica thinks I should reach out, that I owe you an apology for how I handled everything. She's right. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I handled the situation poorly. If you are pregnant, if our children exist somewhere, I want you to know that I regret my reaction. Not the outcome. I think we both know our marriage was over, but the way I treated you in that moment. You deserved better. I hope you're happy, wherever you are. Marcus, I read the message 3 times, looking for the manipulation, the angle, the hidden agenda. But it seemed genuine. Marcus had realized, too late, that he'd handled things badly. The problem was, I no longer cared about his regret. I was 36 weeks pregnant, glowing with health and happiness, surrounded by friends who celebrated my babies before they were even born. I had a beautiful home, financial security, and a future that belonged entirely to me and my children. Marcus's apology was 6 months too late and a lifetime irrelevant. I deleted the email without responding. 2 days later, Sarah burst into my house with her laptop, her face flushed with excitement. Elena, you have to see this. She opened her computer to a social media page I didn't recognize. I was doing some research for a client's wedding, and I stumbled across this. Look. The page belonged to Jessica Morrison, and it was full of wedding planning posts, venue photos, dress shopping, cake tastings, all the rituals of a woman planning her dream wedding. But what caught my attention were the comments. Friends and colleagues were posting congratulations, but there was an undercurrent I recognized. Whispers about the rushed engagement, speculation about why they were planning a wedding so quickly after his divorce was finalized. Look at this post, Sarah said, scrolling to a recent entry. Jessica had posted a photo of herself in a wedding dress, radiant and glowing. The caption read, 8 weeks to go. Marcus and I can't wait to start our family together. Thank you all for your support during this exciting time. Start their family. The words hit me like a physical blow. There's more, Sarah said quietly, scrolling through the comments. Look at this. One of Jessica's friends had commented, so exciting. And Marcus must be thrilled to finally have the family he's always wanted. Another, after everything he went through with his first marriage, he deserves this happiness. And then, the one that made my blood boil, I heard his ex-wife couldn't have children. How wonderful that he's found someone who can give him what he really wants. I sat back, my hands clenched into fists. Marcus had rewritten our story. I wasn't the woman who'd gotten pregnant against all odds and been rejected for it. I was the barren wife who couldn't give him what he wanted. Elena, Sarah said gently, are you okay? I'm fine, I lied, though my blood pressure was probably spiking enough to concern Dr. Hartman. There's something else, Sarah said, her voice careful. The wedding. It's here. In Portland. I looked at her sharply. What? Next month. At the River Place Hotel. Apparently Jessica has family here, and they wanted a destination wedding. Sarah paused. Elena, what are the chances that Marcus would choose Portland of all places? My mind was racing. Portland was a big city, but the high-end wedding venues were limited. The River Place Hotel was less than 10 miles from my house. It could be a coincidence, I said, but I didn't believe it. Or, Sarah said carefully, someone told him you might be here. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Marcus walking down the street where I lived, recognizing me despite the changes pregnancy had made to my appearance. I imagined him seeing my rounded belly and realizing what he'd thrown away, but worse. I imagined him trying to claim my children. By morning, I'd made a decision. I called Dr. Hartman. I want to discuss early delivery, I said without preamble. Elena, is everything all right? You're not having contractions, are you? No, but I have concerns about security. Personal safety. I think it would be better if the babies were born sooner rather than later. Dr. Hartman was quiet for a moment. Elena, at 36 weeks, early delivery is certainly possible, but it's not without risks. Can you tell me what's prompting this request? I told her about Marcus, about the wedding, about my growing certainty that my anonymous new life was about to be compromised. I see, she said finally. Let me examine you this afternoon. If the babies are positioned well and your body is ready, we can discuss a controlled early delivery. But Elena, I need you to understand, this is a significant decision. I understand, I said. But doctor, I need these babies to be born before anyone can interfere with my choices about their future. Then let's make sure they arrive safely, Dr. Hartman said. Come in at 2 o'clock. The examination revealed what I'd hoped, my body was ready. The babies were healthy, positioned correctly, and could safely be delivered within the next few days. We'll schedule you for tomorrow morning, Dr. Hartman decided. C-section, planned and controlled. You'll need someone to drive you home and help with recovery. I'll be there, Sarah said immediately when I called her. Elena, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I replied. That evening, I sat in the nursery one last time as a pregnant woman, my hands resting on my belly where 3 lives were preparing to enter the world. Tomorrow, I would meet my children. Tomorrow, Elena Rodriguez would officially become a mother, and if Marcus Chen happened to be in the same city, celebrating his new marriage and his fresh start with a woman who could supposedly give him everything I couldn't, well, that would just be an interesting coincidence, because by the time he said "I do" to Jessica Morrison, I would be holding 3 perfect babies who would never know they'd once been unwanted. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Elena, this is Jessica. I hope I'm not overstepping, but I wanted you to know that Marcus has been having second thoughts about some things. If you're in the area and would like to talk, I think it might be healing for both of you. We're at the River Place Hotel through the weekend. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, thank you for reaching out. I'm exactly where I need to be. Then I turned off my phone and began preparing for the morning that would change everything. Tomorrow, I would become a mother, and Marcus Chen would lose his last chance to be a father to the children he'd rejected. The irony was perfect. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt the babies moving restlessly, as if they too were eager to begin their new lives. In a few hours, they would take their first breaths in a world where they were completely and utterly wanted. That was all that mattered, everything else was just noise. The first cry pierced the air at 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that would forever divide my life into before and after. Baby A, my son, announced his arrival with the kind of indignant wail that suggested he had strong opinions about being evicted from his comfortable home. "He's perfect," Dr. Hartman announced, placing him on my chest for those precious first moments before the nurses whisked him away for examination. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Excellent muscle tone. Baby B followed 3 minutes later, my first daughter, with a more contemplative entry into the world. She opened her eyes immediately, seeming to study the bright lights of the delivery room with serious concentration. 6 pounds, 14 ounces, the nurse called out. Beautiful color, strong heartbeat. Baby C, my second daughter, made her debut at 7:31 a.m. with what the delivery team would later describe as theatrical flair. She waited until everyone was focused on her siblings before announcing herself with a cry that could have shattered glass. 6 pounds, 11 ounces, Dr. Hartman laughed. And clearly the loudest of the three. As I held my daughters for the first time, my son was getting extra attention from the respiratory team as a precaution. I felt something settle into place inside me. These weren't Marcus's rejected children or Elena Chen's desperate attempt to save a marriage. These were Sophia, Lucas, and Gabriela Rodriguez, perfect and complete and entirely mine. Sarah was the first visitor allowed into the recovery room, carrying flowers and wearing a grin that could have powered the entire hospital. "Elena, they're gorgeous," she whispered, peering into the bassinet where all 3 babies were sleeping peacefully. "Look at those little faces." I couldn't stop staring at them. Lucas had my dark hair but Marcus's stubborn chin. Sophia had inherited my grandmother's delicate features but her father's long fingers. Gabriella was clearly going to be the rebel. Even sleeping, she managed to look like she was plotting something. "Have you called your lawyer?" Sarah asked quietly. "Already done," I confirmed. "Richard is filing all the birth certificates under Rodriguez. No father listed. As far as the legal system is concerned, these children have no connection to Marcus Chen. And if he somehow finds out?" I looked down at my sleeping babies, thinking about the man who had asked me to terminate this pregnancy, who had moved out rather than celebrate the miracle we'd hoped for. Then he'll discover that Elena Rodriguez is a very different woman than Elena Chen was. The next few days passed in the beautiful chaos of new motherhood. Feeding schedules, diaper changes, and the overwhelming joy of watching 3 tiny personalities begin to emerge. Lucas was the serious one, studying everything with intense focus. Sophia was the diplomat, rarely crying and seeming to comfort her siblings when they were fussy. Gabriella was the diva, demanding attention and making sure everyone knew when she was displeased. I was completely, utterly smitten. Dr. Hartman had insisted on a full week's stay in the hospital given the early delivery and multiple births, which gave me time to adjust before facing the world. But on Thursday afternoon, that peaceful bubble was shattered by an unexpected visitor. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" A woman in an expensive suit appeared at my door, carrying a legal briefcase and wearing the kind of smile that made my maternal instincts go into overdrive. "My name is Patricia Hendricks. I'm an attorney representing Dr. Marcus Chen." My blood went cold, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong room. I don't know anyone by that name. Mrs. Rodriguez, we both know that's not true." Patricia stepped into the room uninvited, her eyes immediately finding the 3 bassinets. "Or should I say, Mrs. Chen?" I pressed the nurse call button, my heart hammering. "Security," I said into the intercom. "I need security in room 314 immediately." "That won't be necessary," Patricia said smoothly. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to deliver an offer. Get out of my room. Dr. Chen would like to meet his children." The words hung in the air like a threat. I felt my whole body tense, every protective instinct screaming danger. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my voice betrayed me. Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Shall I read from your medical records? Elena Maria Chen, formerly Elena Rodriguez before your marriage, daughter of Carlos and Maria Rodriguez, deceased. Trust fund beneficiary. Former resident of Manhattan, disappeared 6 months ago while pregnant with triplets conceived through IVF treatments." Security arrived just as she finished speaking, but Patricia held up her hands peacefully. "I'm leaving," she said. "But Mrs. Chen, Dr. Chen knows about the children. He knows you're here. And he wants to be involved in their lives." "How?" I demanded as the security guards waited for direction. How did he find us? Patricia smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen. Dr. Morrison is quite thorough when she sets her mind to something. She hired investigators months ago to locate you. Imagine her surprise when she discovered you'd given birth to triplets just days before her wedding. Jessica. The woman who had reached out with sympathy and concern had been hunting me the entire time. She wanted to make sure Dr. Chen knew about his children before he married her, Patricia continued. Professional courtesy, she called it. Woman to woman. After security escorted Patricia out, I sat in my hospital bed, shaking. My perfect plan, my anonymous new life, my protected children, all of it compromised by a woman who had pretended to be my ally. I called Richard immediately. Elena, slow down, he said after I'd explained the situation in a rush of panic and fury. First, you're safe. You're in a hospital with security. Second, Marcus knowing about the children doesn't automatically give him any rights. He could file for custody, not without establishing paternity, which would require your cooperation or a court order. And since you're no longer Elena Chen legally, and the children are born under your new identity, he'd have to prove you're the same person. The lawyer seemed pretty confident. Lawyers always seem confident. That's what we're paid for. Richard's voice was reassuring. Elena, listen to me. You hold all the cards here. You disappeared legally, established a new identity, gave birth. Under that identity, Marcus would have to file suit in Oregon under your new name, prove you're his ex-wife, and then prove paternity. That's a complicated legal process that could take years. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you're free to live your life. But Elena, if Marcus really wants a relationship with those children, eventually you'll have to decide whether fighting him is worth the cost. After hanging up, I looked down at my sleeping babies and felt a fierce surge of protectiveness. Marcus had rejected them when they were just cells dividing in my womb. He didn't get to claim them now that they were real, breathing, perfect human beings, but the thought of a legal battle, of having to prove I was a fit mother, of having my past dissected in court, it made me sick. I was still mulling over my options when Sarah arrived for her evening visit, carrying coffee and wearing a grim expression. Elena, we need to talk, she said, settling into the chair beside my bed. I've been doing some research on Dr. Marcus Chen and his fiancée. What kind of research? The kind that involves calling in favors from journalist friends and digging through public records. Sarah pulled out her phone. Did you know that Dr. Jessica Morrison has been trying to have children for 3 years? I felt my stomach drop. What? She's had 2 miscarriages and been through multiple rounds of IVF. All failures. Sarah scrolled through her notes. There are medical records, sealed, but my friend has sources, indicating that Dr. Morrison has a condition that makes carrying a pregnancy to term extremely unlikely. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. She's not trying to reunite Marcus with his children out of kindness. She's trying to acquire ready-made children for the husband who wants a family, Sarah confirmed. Elena, I think this whole thing, the wedding in Portland, the reaching out to you, the timing, it's all been orchestrated. I leaned back against my pillows, feeling the weight of betrayal settle over me. Jessica Morrison hadn't been an innocent bystander offering sympathy. She'd been hunting me, studying me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. There's more, Sarah said gently. The wedding is this Saturday. 3 days from now. So? So Marcus has been calling the hospital. He's asked to visit you. I sat up so quickly it pulled at my incision. What did you tell them? The hospital can't give out patient information, but Elena sat at my ice. He knows which hospital. He knows you're here with newborn triplets. If he really wants to see you, he'll find a way. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made me tense, every footstep could be Marcus coming to claim children he'd never wanted. I found myself staring at Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella, memorizing their faces in case this was my last night as their only parent. Friday morning brought unexpected salvation in the form of Dr. Hartman's cheerful voice. Elena, I have good news. All 3 babies are doing beautifully, and you're healing ahead of schedule. I'm comfortable discharging you today if you'd like to go home. Today? Hope bloomed in my chest. Really? Really? The pediatrician has cleared all 3 babies, your incision looks perfect, and frankly, you'll probably rest better at home than you will here. I was packed and ready to leave within 2 hours. Sarah had arranged for a car service with infant seats, and we snuck out through a service entrance to avoid any potential encounters in the main lobby. As Portland's skyline disappeared behind us, I felt like I was escaping something dark and threatening. But I also knew this wasn't over. Marcus and Jessica had found me once, they could find me again. My phone buzzed as we pulled into my driveway. A text from an unknown number. Elena, this is Marcus. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But those children are mine too. We need to talk. I'll be at the River Place Hotel until Sunday. Please consider meeting with me. For their sake, if not for ours. I showed the message to Sarah as she helped me carry the car seats into the house. Are you going to respond? She asked. I looked down at my children, sleeping peacefully in their carriers, blissfully unaware that their existence had become the center of a complex adult drama. No, I said finally. But I think Marcus Chen is about to get a wedding present he'll never forget. What do you mean? I smiled, feeling something shift inside me. The terrified woman hiding in a hospital room was gone. In her place was a mother who would do anything to protect her children. I mean that tomorrow, while Marcus is pledging his love to the woman who hunted me down like a bounty hunter, I'm going to make sure he understands exactly what he chose to throw away. Elena, what are you planning? I carried Lucas's car seat into the nursery, Sarah following with the girls. As I settled my son into his crib, in his room, in our house, I felt the last of my fear transform into something much more powerful. I'm going to attend a wedding, I said simply. Sarah stared at me. You're not serious. I'm completely serious. I turned to face her, and I could see in her expression that she recognized something new in mine. Marcus wanted to start fresh. With a woman who could give him children. Jessica wanted a husband who came with a ready-made family. They've both been scheming and manipulating and treating my children like prizes to be won. Elena, tomorrow, they're going to learn that the woman they've been hunting is not the same woman who left New York 6 months ago. I looked down at my sleeping children, my voice growing soft but deadly serious. They're going to learn that you don't threaten a mother's cubs without consequences. The wedding was in 18 hours. Time enough to plan, to prepare, and to make sure that Marcus Chen's happiest day became a moment of devastating clarity about what he'd truly lost. After all, he'd always loved dramatic entrances. Tomorrow, I was going to give him one he'd never forget. Saturday morning dawned with the kind of crystalline clarity that Portland reserved for its most dramatic moments. I stood in my bedroom, studying my reflection as I prepared for the performance of a lifetime. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the broken wife who had fled New York 7 months ago. Motherhood had transformed me in ways I hadn't expected. My body was different, softer in some places, stronger in others, but it was my eyes that showed the most dramatic change. Gone was the desperate pleading of a woman trying to save her marriage. In its place was the steady, uncompromising gaze of someone who had found her true purpose. Are you absolutely sure about this? Sarah asked for the 10th time, bouncing Gabriella gently while I finished getting ready. Because once you walk into that wedding, there's no taking it back. I slipped into the designer dress I'd chosen specifically for this moment, a stunning navy blue that complemented my post-pregnancy figure while projecting sophisticated confidence. The kind of dress that announced its wearer as someone to be taken seriously. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied, checking my appearance one final time. Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella deserve to know what kind of man their biological father really is. And Marcus deserves to see exactly what he chose to throw away. The babies were dressed in their finest outfits, matching cream-colored rompers with delicate embroidery that Sarah had found at a boutique specializing in formal infant wear. At 6 days old, they were still small enough to be portable but alert enough to be undeniably present. The car service will be here in 10 minutes, I announced, gathering the carefully packed diaper bag that contained everything we'd need for our dramatic entrance. Sarah, if you're having second thoughts about being my accomplice, are you kidding? Sarah grinned, settling Sophia into her carrier. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Besides, someone needs to document the moment when Dr. Marcus Chen realizes he's the biggest idiot in medical history. The River Place Hotel was Portland's premier wedding venue, a gleaming monument to luxury that overlooked the Willamette River. As our car pulled up to the circular drive, I could see other guests arriving, well-dressed medical professionals. And their spouses, chattering excitedly about the happy couple. I recognized several faces from the social media posts I'd studied. Dr. Morrison's colleagues from the pediatric surgery department, Marcus's fellow cardiac surgeons, and various hospital administrators who had probably attended dozens of similar celebrations. None of them had any idea they were about to witness something unprecedented. "The ceremony is in the rose garden," Sarah murmured, consulting her phone where she'd pulled up the wedding details from Jessica's publicly posted timeline. Reception immediately following in the grand ballroom. Very traditional, very proper. Very much the kind of wedding Marcus had always imagined for himself, elegant, prestigious, and designed to showcase his status in the medical community. I adjusted Lucas in his carrier, marveling at how peaceful all three babies seemed despite the gravity of the moment. They had slept through the car ride and showed no signs of the fussiness that had characterized their first few days. It was almost as if they understood the importance of what we were about to do. "Elena," Sarah said quietly as we approached the hotel entrance, "are you sure you want to do this publicly? We could wait, find a private moment." "No." My voice was firm. "Marcus made his choice to humiliate and reject me privately. He gets to learn about his consequences publicly." The hotel lobby was buzzing with pre-ceremony activity. Guests were signing the registry, picking up programs, and making their way toward the rose garden where the ceremony would take place in less than an hour. I spotted several people I recognized from Marcus's medical conference photos, their faces bright with anticipation for their colleague's big day. We found seats in the back row of the garden, partially concealed by a flowering trellis that would hide us until the crucial moment. Sarah had brought a professional quality camera with a telephoto lens, ostensibly to capture the baby's first major outing but actually to document every moment of what was about to unfold. The garden was stunning, white roses and baby's breath arranged in elegant displays, with a vine-covered arbor where Marcus and Jessica would exchange vows. Chair covers in crisp white linen, silk ribbon bows, and scattered rose petals created an atmosphere of fairy tale perfection. It was exactly the kind of wedding Jessica had been posting about for months, down to the last carefully curated detail. "There he is," Sarah whispered, nodding toward the front of the garden where Marcus had appeared, adjusting his boutonniere and speaking quietly with his best my breath caught. 7 months had passed since I'd last seen him, and he looked every inch the successful surgeon he'd always been. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his hair immaculately styled, and his posture radiated the confidence of a man who had gotten everything he wanted. He was smiling as he chatted with guests, accepting congratulations and looking like someone who had never experienced a moment of doubt about his choices. "And there's the bride," Sarah added as Jessica appeared at the garden's entrance, stunning in a princess-style gown that must have cost more than most people's cars. Jessica Morrison was everything I had never been, petite, blonde, and glowing, with the kind of happiness that came from complete certainty about the future. She moved through the pre-ceremony chaos with practiced grace, air-kissing relatives and posing for photos with the effortless poise of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. As I watched her, I felt a complex mix of emotions. This woman had hunted me across the country, hired investigators to track down my children, and manipulated both Marcus and me for her own ends. But she was also about to marry a man who had proven himself capable of devastating cruelty when faced with inconvenient truths. In a strange way, I almost felt sorry for her. "Elena," Sarah whispered urgently, "the lawyer is here. The one who came to the hospital." I followed her gaze and spotted Patricia Hendricks near the front row, looking every bit as predatory as she had in my hospital room. She was scanning the crowd with the focused intensity of someone expecting trouble. Good. Let her expect it. The string quartet began playing, signaling that the ceremony was about to begin. Guests settled into their seats, phone cameras appeared, and an expectant hush fell over the garden. Marcus took his place at the altar, his best man beside him. From my vantage point in the back, I could see his profile clearly, the strong jaw I had once loved to trace with my fingers, the serious expression he wore when concentrating on something important. He looked happy. Genuinely, completely happy. In a way I hadn't seen since the early days of our marriage. The music swelled, and Jessica began her walk down the aisle on her father's arm. She was radiant, her veil flowing behind her like something from a movie, her bouquet of white roses and baby's breath perfectly complementing the garden's decor. Marcus's face when he saw her was everything a bride could hope for: wonder, love, and complete devotion. Whatever his flaws, whatever his capacity for cruelty, in that moment he looked like a man who believed he had found his perfect match. The officiant, Dr. Richard Keller, according to the program, a longtime colleague of Marcus's, began the traditional words that had united couples for centuries. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Marcus and Jessica in holy matrimony. As the ceremony progressed through its familiar rhythms, I found myself studying the faces of the guests. Medical professionals, family members, friends, all of them completely absorbed in the romantic tableau unfolding before them. None of them knew they were watching a man marry a woman who had orchestrated an elaborate deception to acquire the children he had rejected. None of them knew that those children were sitting 20 feet away, sleeping peacefully in their carriers. If anyone can show just cause why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace, Dr. Keller intoned, his voice carrying easily across the silent garden. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. I stood up. The movement was subtle at first, just a woman shifting in her seat. But as I continued rising, reaching for Lucas's carrier while Sarah gathered the girls, the ripple of awareness began spreading through the crowd. People in the back rows turned to look. Then the middle rows. Then the front. Marcus, focused entirely on Jessica, didn't notice the disturbance behind him. But Jessica, facing the crowd, saw everything. Her face went white as she recognized me. Her bouquet trembled in her hands, and I saw her lips form a single, silent word: no. I walked down the aisle with deliberate, measured steps, carrying Lucas while Sarah followed with Sophia and Gabriella. The babies, as if sensing the gravity of the moment, remained peaceful and alert. Whispers erupted throughout the garden as guests tried to understand what they were witnessing. Who was this woman? Why was she interrupting the ceremony? And were those babies? Marcus finally turned to see what was causing the commotion, and our eyes met across 20 feet of rose-petal scattered aisle. The shock on his face was everything I had hoped for and more. He went completely still, his mouth falling open, his hand unconsciously reaching toward me before stopping mid-gesture. "Elena," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the growing murmur of confused guests. I continued walking until I was close enough to speak without shouting, close enough for him to see clearly what he had thrown away. "Hello, Marcus," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I believe you wanted to meet your children." The silence that followed was deafening. 200 guests held their collective breath as the implications of my words sank in. Marcus stared at the baby in my arms, then at the two carriers Sarah held, then back at me. His face cycled through a dozen emotions: shock, disbelief, recognition, and something that might have been grief. "These are," he began, then stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella," I said, shifting Lucas so Marcus could see his face clearly. "Your son and daughters. The children you asked me to terminate 7 months ago." Jessica made a small, broken sound that might have been a sob or a gasp. The officiant looked between Marcus and me with the bewildered expression of someone completely out of his depth. "Elena," Marcus said, his voice stronger now but still shaky, "what are you doing here?" "I'm giving you what you said you wanted," I replied calmly. "The chance to meet your children. Though I have to say, I'm surprised you're interested now, considering you moved out rather than celebrate their conception." The crowd was buzzing now, whispers and murmurs creating a low hum of speculation and shock. I could see people pulling out phones, no doubt texting frantically to friends who weren't at the wedding. Dr. Marcus Chen's first wife had just appeared at his wedding ceremony with 3 babies she claimed were his children. It would be the medical community gossip of the decade. "Marcus," Jessica said, her voice high and strained, this isn't the time." "Actually," I said, turning to address her directly, "I think this is the perfect time. After all, you were so concerned about Marcus knowing about his children before he got married. Professional courtesy, you called it. Woman to woman." Jessica's face flushed red, and I could see the exact moment she realized I knew about her role in hunting me down. "I can explain," she began. "Please do," I said, settling Lucas more comfortably in my arms. "Explain to all these lovely people how you hired investigators to track down Marcus's pregnant ex-wife." Explain how you've been manipulating this entire situation to acquire ready-made children for the husband who wants a family. The crowd's murmurs turned to gasps. This was no longer just a wedding interruption, this was a revelation of deception. That went far beyond simple romantic drama. Marcus looked between Jessica and me, understanding dawning in his eyes. Jessica, is this true? Did you know about Elena before today? Marcus, I can explain everything, Jessica said desperately. I was trying to protect you, protect him. I laughed, the sound carrying clearly across the silent garden. From what? From the consequences of his own choices? I turned back to Marcus, meeting his eyes directly. 7 months ago, you told me these children were a deception. You asked me to terminate the pregnancy rather than risk your career advancement. You moved out of our home rather than support me through a high-risk pregnancy. Marcus flinched as if I'd struck him. Elena, I was scared, you were selfish, I corrected. And now, on the day you're marrying a woman who has been hunting me and my children like a bounty hunter, you want to claim them? The officiant cleared his throat nervously. Perhaps we should postpone the ceremony until this matter can be resolved privately. No, I said firmly. This needs to be resolved right here, right now, in front of all these witnesses. I looked around at the crowd of shocked faces. Because I want everyone to understand exactly what kind of man Marcus Chin is. I held Lucas higher, making sure Marcus could see his son's face clearly. This is your son. He has your chin and your stubborn streak. He was born at 7 pounds, 2 ounces, completely healthy despite being 5 weeks premature. Marcus's eyes filled with tears as he stared at Lucas, his hand reaching out again before dropping to his side. And these, I continued, nodding towards Sarah and the carriers, are your daughters. Sophia and Gabriella. They're beautiful, brilliant, and perfect in every way. Elena, Marcus whispered, I didn't know, you didn't want to know, I corrected. When I told you I was pregnant, you immediately started talking about termination and legal liability. When I tried to share my joy with you, you moved out. When I needed your support most, you abandoned me. The crowd was completely silent now, absorbed in the drama unfolding before them. This was better than any soap opera, more compelling than any reality show. And now, I continued, my voice growing stronger, 7 months later, on your wedding day to a woman who has been stalking me across the country, you want to play father. I made a mistake, Marcus said, tears now flowing freely down his cheeks. Elena, I made a terrible mistake. I was overwhelmed and scared and I handled everything wrong. Yes, you did, I agreed. And the consequence of that mistake is that these children don't need you. They have a mother who wanted them from the moment they were conceived. They have a home where they're celebrated, not seen as inconveniences. They have a future that doesn't depend on your approval or support. I turned to address the crowd directly, my voice carrying to every corner of the garden. I want everyone here to understand something. These children exist because I refuse to give up hope. They're healthy and thriving because I left a man who saw them as problems to be solved rather than blessings to be celebrated. And they're here today because their father deserves to see exactly what he chose to throw away. Marcus was sobbing now, his carefully groomed appearance dissolving as the weight of his choices hit him. Jessica stood frozen beside him, her fairy tale wedding transformed into a public humiliation. Elena, Marcus choked out, please. Can we talk? Privately? I want to. I need to. What, Marcus? What do you need? I adjusted Lucas in my arms, feeling his tiny hand grip my finger. Do you need to explain why you're marrying a woman who hired investigators to hunt down your children? Do you need to justify why you're only interested in being a father now that it's convenient for your new wife's agenda? That's not, Jessica started, but I cut her off. Isn't it? Tell me, Dr. Morrison, what exactly did you plan to do once you'd located my children? Did you think I'd just hand them over to the man who rejected them? Did you imagine we'd all play happy family together? Jessica's composure finally cracked completely. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. Marcus deserves to be a father. These children deserve to have their father in their lives. These children deserve to be wanted, I said firmly. And they are wanted. By me. Completely, unconditionally, from the moment they were conceived. I looked around at the crowd of faces staring at us in fascination and horror. I'm sorry to have interrupted your celebration, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the garden. But I wanted Marcus to see his children. I wanted him to understand what he chose to walk away from. I turned back to Marcus one final time. Congratulations on your promotion, your new marriage, and your fresh start. I hope you and Dr. Morrison will be very happy together. Elena, wait, Marcus stepped toward me, but I was already walking away, Sarah beside me with the girls. Goodbye, Marcus, I said without turning around. Enjoy your wedding. As we walked back down the aisle, I could hear the explosion of conversation behind us. 200 guests trying to process what they'd just witnessed, phones buzzing with texts and calls, and the sound of Marcus calling my name, but I didn't look back. We had delivered our message. Marcus Chin now knew exactly what he had lost, everything else was just noise. The car ride home from the wedding was silent except for the gentle sounds of 3 sleeping babies and my own steady heartbeat. Sarah kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, probably expecting me to break down or celebrate or show some dramatic reaction to what we'd just accomplished. Instead, I felt an overwhelming sense of completion. Not satisfaction, exactly, but the quiet certainty that comes from finally closing a chapter that should have ended months ago. Elena, Sarah said quietly as we pulled into my driveway, how do you feel? I looked down at Lucas, his tiny face peaceful in sleep, completely unaware that he'd just attended his father's wedding as an uninvited guest. Free, I said simply. The next few hours passed in the familiar rhythm of caring for newborns, feeding, changing, soothing. Gabriella was fussy after all the excitement, but Sophia and Lucas seemed unfazed by their dramatic debut into Portland's social scene. As I settled them into their cribs for the evening, I felt my phone buzzing constantly with notifications I chose to ignore. By midnight, curiosity finally got the better of me. 17 missed calls from Marcus. 43 text messages from various numbers. Dozens of social media notifications. I scrolled through Marcus's texts first, watching his emotional progression play out in real time. Elena, please answer your phone. We need to talk. I know you're angry, but walking away isn't going to solve anything. Those children are mine too. You can't just disappear again. Elena, I'm begging you. Please call me back. I made mistakes, but I want to fix this. I want to be their father. The wedding is off. Jessica and I are done. This changes everything. The last message had been sent 20 minutes ago. I'm outside your house. Please let me in. I walked to the front window and peered through the curtains. Sure enough, Marcus's BMW was parked across the street, and I could see his silhouette behind the wheel. My phone rang. Marcus again, this time, I answered. Elena, thank God. Please, can we talk? Just 5 minutes. No, I said calmly. You can't come in. You can't disrupt my children's sleep schedule. And you can't expect me to manage your emotional crisis because your wedding imploded. Our children, he corrected. Elena, they're our children. No, Marcus. They're my children. You made that choice 7 months ago when you moved out rather than celebrate their existence. I was scared. You were selfish. I interrupted. And now you're sitting outside my house because seeing them made you realize what you threw away. But that's not my problem to solve. Elena, please. Just let me see them again. Let me hold them. The desperation in his voice was almost painful to hear. This was the Marcus I remembered from our early marriage, vulnerable, emotional, human. But I'd learned the hard way not to trust that version of him when difficult decisions needed to be made. Go home, Marcus. Or go to Jessica. Or go to a hotel. But you can't stay here. The engagement is over, he said. I called it off after you left. When I realized what she'd done, how she'd manipulated everything. Good for you. That doesn't change anything between us. Doesn't it? His voice cracked. Elena, I saw them. I saw my children. My son has my eyes. My daughters. God, they're beautiful. How can you expect me to just walk away? The same way you walked away when they were just possibilities instead of realities, I said. The same way you prioritized your career over your family. The same way you chose to believe the worst of me instead of supporting me through the hardest time of my life. Silence on the other end of the line. Marcus, I'm going to hang up now. I'm going to feed my babies and put them back to sleep and continue with the life I've built without you. Tomorrow, you're going to wake up and realize that some choices can't be undone. Elena, wait. I hung up and turned off my phone. through the window, I watched Marcus sit in his car for another hour before finally driving away. Only then did I allow myself to feel the weight of what had happened. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Sarah arrived with coffee and pastries, followed shortly by a woman I didn't recognize, tall, elegant, with silver hair and kind eyes. "Elena, this is Margaret Chen," Sarah said carefully. "Marcus's mother." I tensed, instinctively moving closer to the baby's carriers. "Mrs. Chen. Please, call me Margaret," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "And please don't look at me like I'm here to steal your children. I'm here to apologize." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas. What I saw instead was genuine regret and something that looked like exhaustion.
"I raised a son who thought success meant never showing vulnerability," Margaret continued, who believed that admitting fear was weakness. "Yesterday I watched him realize the cost of those lessons." She gestured toward the carriers where Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella were sleeping peacefully. "May I see them?" After a moment's hesitation, I nodded. Margaret approached slowly, as if she were approaching something sacred. "My goodness," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "They're perfect." "They are," I agreed. "Marcus called me last night. He was broken, completely broken." Margaret looked up at me. "I've never heard my son cry like that." "I'm sorry he's hurting," I said, and surprisingly I meant it. "But his pain doesn't obligate me to fix it." "No, it doesn't," Margaret agreed. "But Elena, those children have a grandmother who would very much like to be part of their lives, if you'll allow it." I hadn't expected this. In all my planning and preparation, I'd never considered that Marcus's family might want a relationship with the children independently of him. "I need to think about it," I said honestly. "Of course." Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you, not from Marcus. From me. Consider it a baby gift from a grandmother who should have been there from the beginning." After she left, I opened the envelope to find a check for $50,000 and a handwritten note for Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella's college funds. "Every child deserves to know they're loved by their family, even when the adults make terrible mistakes. With love and hope, Grandmother Margaret." The media attention started that afternoon. Someone at the wedding had filmed the entire confrontation, and by Sunday evening, the video was trending on social media with headlines like "Doctor's Ex-Wife Crashes Wedding with Secret Triplets" and "Medical Drama, the Wedding Interruption That Broke the Internet." I was suddenly grateful for my legal name change and Portland address. Most of the coverage focused on Dr. Marcus Chen's mysterious ex-wife without actually identifying me by name or location. Marcus tried calling 17 more times over the next week. I didn't answer. Instead, I focused on establishing routines with the babies, decorating their nursery, and slowly building a community of other parents in Portland. The trust fund meant I didn't need to work immediately, giving me the luxury of being completely present for my children's early months. 2 weeks after the wedding, I received a formal letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. "Dear Ms. Rodriguez," it began, and I realized Marcus had found a way around the identity issue. "Our client, Marcus Chen, has retained our services to establish paternity and visitation rights regarding the minor children Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella Rodriguez, born." My hands shook as I read the legal language demanding DNA tests, custody evaluations, and formal visitation schedule. Marcus was making good on his threat to fight for access to the children. I called Richard immediately. "I've been expecting this," he said after I read him the letter. "Elena, you knew this was coming. Marcus has rights as the biological father, and now that he knows the children exist, he's going to pursue those rights, even after abandoning us. Even then, the courts care about the children's best interests, not about punishing parents for past mistakes. So what do I do? You fight. But Elena, you also need to consider what's actually best for Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella. Do you want them growing up knowing their father tried to be part of their lives and you prevented it?" That night, I stood in the nursery watching my children sleep, wrestling with the hardest decision of my life. I could fight Marcus in court, probably successfully given his abandonment and the circumstances of their conception, but did I want my children's childhood defined by a custody battle? More importantly, Did I want them to grow up believing their father hadn't wanted them? The answer came to me as I watched Sophia reach for her brother's hand in sleep, their tiny fingers intertwining. I wanted them to grow up knowing they were loved unconditionally by their mother, and that every decision I made was in their best interests, not motivated by anger or revenge. I called Marcus. "Elena," he answered on the first ring, his voice breathless with hope. "We need to talk," I said, "but not about reconciliation, about our children." We met the next afternoon at a neutral location, a family mediation center that Sarah had recommended. Marcus arrived precisely on time, looking haggard but determined. "Thank you for agreeing to this," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "I'm not doing this for you," I clarified. "I'm doing this because Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella deserve better than having their childhood defined by their parents' inability to communicate." Marcus nodded, accepting the boundary. "I want to be their father," he said simply. "Not part-time, not weekend visits. I want to be present for their lives in whatever way you'll allow. Even though you initially wanted me to terminate the pregnancy." Marcus flinched. "That's something I'll regret for the rest of my life, Elena." I was terrified of being a father, terrified of failing them, the way I felt my own father had failed me. "So you chose to fail them preemptively?" "Yes," he said quietly, "and it was the worst decision I've ever made." We spent 3 hours with the mediator, hammering out the framework for what would become our co-parenting relationship. Supervised visits at first, gradually increasing as Marcus proved his commitment, financial support that went far beyond legal requirements, and most importantly, absolute transparency about any future relationships that might affect the children. "What about Jessica?" I asked as we prepared to leave. "There is no Jessica," Marcus said firmly. "There won't be anyone for a very long time. I need to figure out how to be the father they deserve before I even think about being anyone's partner." 6 months later, I watched from the park bench as Marcus pushed Sophia on the baby swing, while Lucas and Gabriella napped in their stroller. The tentative, awkward man who had first held his children with shaking hands had transformed into someone confident and natural with them. He came every Tuesday and Thursday for supervised visits, and every Saturday for longer outings to the park or children's museum. He never missed a scheduled visit, never canceled for work, and never tried to negotiate for more time than we'd agreed upon. Slowly, carefully, he was earning his place in their lives. "He's different," Sarah observed, joining me on the bench. "From what you've told me about who he was, he's completely different." "He is," I agreed, watching as Marcus carefully transferred Sophia from the swing to his arms, talking to her in the gentle voice he'd developed just for them. "Losing them broke something in him, finding them again, I think it broke something else. Do you forgive him?" I considered the question as Marcus approached with all 3 children, their faces bright with the joy of a perfect afternoon. "I don't forgive him," I said finally, "but I don't need to. I've moved past needing his validation or his apology. What matters now is that he's becoming the father they deserve to have." As Marcus settled the children back into their stroller, preparing for the end of another visit, Lucas reached for him with tiny hands. The expression on Marcus's face, pure love mixed with desperate gratitude, reminded me why I'd made the choice to allow this relationship. "Same time Thursday?" Marcus asked, his voice hopeful but not presumptuous. "Same time Thursday," I confirmed. After he left, I sat in the park with my children, watching the sun set over Portland's skyline. In 18 months I'd lost a marriage, gained 3 perfect humans, and learned that the best revenge isn't destroying someone who hurt you. The best revenge is building something so beautiful that their presence or absence becomes irrelevant. Marcus would spend the rest of his life trying to make up for the choice he'd made in those crucial early months. He'd be a good father, maybe even a great one, but he'd never be their first choice. He'd never be the parent who was there from the beginning, who wanted them when they were just possibilities instead of realities. That honor belonged to me alone. And as I loaded Lucas, Sophia, and Gabriella into their car seats for the drive home to the life we'd built together, I realized that was exactly the way it should be. Some stories don't end with forgiveness or reconciliation or neat resolution. Some stories end with a mother and her children, driving home in the golden hour light, knowing that they are exactly where they belong. This was one of those stories, and it was perfect. Up next, You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.